Hey, what's up everybody? I'd like to welcome you to another Juice tutorial. And in this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're actually going to start putting some sliders on our screen and control our ADSR through the sliders for our synth. So before we get started, just want to remind you about our audio programmer community. So we have now 5,000 members in our community, developers of all different levels, and we want you to join us if you're looking to get into audio programming, or if you're already audio programming. You can join us and help each other out and just connect with one another. And you can join us on theaudioprogrammer.com/community. So let's go ahead and get started. I just have my Juice project open here, and I'm going to just open this up in Xcode now. And as I was saying before, what we have is if we go into our Synth voice class, you can see that we have this ADSR that we created a couple tutorials ago. And what we need to do is we actually want to start to control this with sliders. We have three main parts. So we have the ADSR that actually resides in our Synth voice class. We have our audio processor value tree state, which is a list of all of our parameters. And we have these four parameters: attack, decay, sustain, and release. So this is located in the plugin processor class. So this is kind of our parent class for all of our data for our synthesizer. And then in our editor, we have the sliders that we created a few tutorials ago. So we have attack, decay, sustain, and release sliders. So what we need to do is we need to actually get all of these kind of working together and connect all of these things up. And that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. So first thing that we want to do is we want to go to the Synth voice class. So we have this place where we're setting our attack, decay, sustain, and release in prepare to play. So this was just something we did last tutorial just to get something going and actually see that our ADSR was actually working. But now we want those to be controlled by our sliders and by our audio processor value tree state. So how are we going to do this? So one thing that we could do is we could create a way that we could access all of these things and set these parameters, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go below prepare to play here, and I'm going to create a method. So let's call this, so this is in our Synth voice class. Make sure that you do that because that's the class that we're in. And let's call this update ADSR. And then what we're going to do, I'm just going to leave this blank for now, and we'll just open our braces here just so we can actually move these things in. And so I'm just going to take all of this, the attack, decay, sustain, and release, and the set parameters. I'm just going to cut this, and I'm going to put that there in my update ADSR method. I'm also just going to turn this set gain linear up just a bit, so I will put this at 0.3. Okay, so just so it raises the volume a little bit for us. So now let's take a look at this, right? So we have this attack, decay, sustain, and release parameter, and at the moment we are just giving it some arbitrary values that we've just chosen kind of randomly. And what we need to do, just to walk you through what we need to do, is we need to go back to our plugin processor. So I'll just open that up in another tab. And we have our plugin processor. And in here we have our value trees where we have our attack, decay, sustain, and release parameters. So we need to somehow connect this to our Synth voice. So the way that I would do this is I would just actually create a method that I could call from plugin processor. I always do this where I mess this up. So I could call a method that would be in my process block, and it would find out what the attack, decay, sustain, and release parameters are at a particular moment, and it would update those in my process block. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to create a method that we're going to be able to call in our process block in our plugin processor. So this will take a const. So I'm calling this const because we're reading from the value. We don't need to set the value of what's coming in. So I'm going to say const float attack, and we just need to do this for decay, sustain, and release. So const float decay, const float release. And now we just need to update the ADSR with what our new values are going to be. So we will say attack, decay, sustain. Oh, I called this decay twice. What's going on here? Sustain and release. And then it sets the parameters, so we should be fine there. So now we just need to make sure we put this in our header file. So I'll just copy this here, move to the synth voice class. This of course needs to be public because I need to be able to call this in my plugin processor. So I will just paste this here. And now I have this update ADSR. Great, so now I can go into the plugin processor. And now I just need to call that method in this in the process block, right? Because when the attack, decay, or sustain or release parameter gets changed, I want to change that as soon as possible, and we can do that in our process block. So in here, I already put this this method where we go through our voices. So this synth get num voices is referring to our synth voice class, okay? And at the moment we see that what we need to do is we need to just adjust this a little bit, right? So at the moment what we're doing is we're taking each voice that's in our synth and we're checking to see if it's a synthesizer voice, which is the Juce class, right? But what we really need to do is we need to check to see if it's a synth voice, which is the class that we've created that inherits from synthesizer voice, okay? So for that reason, what I need to do is I actually need to change this Juce synthesizer voice to my own class, which is a synth voice class, right? The reason that I need to do that is because I created a method in the synth voice class called update ADSR, and the update ADSR method that I've created, that's in a synth voice class, right? So that's not something that is a Juce in the Juce synthesizer voice class. So that's the reason that I need to actually check and make sure that that what I'm trying to call update ADSR on is actually a synth voice pointer, a pointer to a synth voice class. Okay, so what I can say is if this is successful and if this voice is indeed a synth, can be successfully dynamically cast into a synth voice class, then what I could say is I could call voice and I should be able to call update ADSR, right? So that's how I could do that. So let's just go back for a second. I'm just doing this for people who are getting started with C++ to show what would happen if I didn't do that, right? So let's say that this is a Juce synthesizer voice. Now watch what happens. If I call voice and then I try to call update ADSR, you will see the method isn't there because it's saying, okay, you're trying to cast to a synthesizer voice, which is a Juce class, right? There's no method in there called update ADSR, and for that, that's the reason why it has to go to my own class, which is a synth voice class. Okay, so yeah, just a little bit of C++ there for you. Okay, so next thing that we need to do is we need to, let me do some house cleaning here real quick before we move on. So this thing where we're logging, I'm just going to get rid of that. So that was just something from our tutorial before. Also, I'm going to go into the synth voice class. I'm going to scroll down and I have this thing called, where I was looking to see where the start sample was and just stopping the execution. I'm just going to delete that as well. Okay, so that was just something we were doing when we were debugging last tutorial. So now what we need to do is we need to get all of this into here, right? So we need to figure out what the value of the attack parameter is in our value tray at one particular point in time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get that value, and if you've seen my previous tutorials on the audio processor value tree state, you know that I could do something like this. I could say auto attack equals, and then we will go into our audio processor value tree state, and then get raw parameter value. And then we just need to get then in there we could just put our ID for the parameter that we want, which would be attack, decay, sustain, and release. Right? So here I would just say attack. Okay? And then we will just do this for all of these other ones. Okay? And there's another little problem here, and I will show you that in a second after I type all this. Auto sustain. Get raw parameter value. Sustain. Release. Get raw parameter value. Okay, so if we look at the get raw parameter value, we will see that this returns a stood atomic float pointer. Okay, so this is a pointer. So what we need to do is we need to dereference. We need to find out what the value at that pointer is. Okay, in that box. Okay, and if you don't know what I mean, check out the tutorials that I've done with my son on teaching him C++, where we talk about how to do pointer basics. Okay, so that's why I need to do this. I need to actually dereference what this pointer is. Okay, so that should be fine now. Oh, copy to implicitly deleted copy constructor. So what this is saying is that it's making a copy of what this is, and because of that, I need to make this a reference to this value that I'm trying to get. So for that reason, I need to put this ampersand. So this is a reference to this. And now what we need to do is now we can put these in. Okay. I personally, so it'll work fine if you just do this. That's fine. Since this is atomic, and atomics are a lot heavier than just a regular float, what I like to do is I like to do this load method and this is just for me or for somebody who's reading through the code, to just note that this is a atomic float that I'm doing. Okay, it's not just a regular the regular float that I'm getting there. Okay, so that's why I'm putting that dot load. That's just, it'll work either way, but I like to put it there just to let the reader know this is atomic. This is a lot. This takes a lot more power to update this. So that's the reason that I'm doing that. So now what we've done is we have this update ADSR. This is calling into our update ADSR method. So all of this should be fine. Okay, so we should be good to go. I'm just going to change this wave from a sine to a sol. So I will just, I have these little notes down here. By the way, I have this on my GitHub as well. If you're looking for the code for this, just check out github.com/the audio programmer, and you will be able to get that. Since this is a Juce object, I just need to put Juce in front of this. And so now that's fine. So now what we've just done is we've attached the audio processor value tree state to our ADSR, which is sitting in our synth voice class. So that's fine. Now what we need to do is we need to actually get our sliders to connect to our audio processor value tree state. So here in our plugin editor, we have this we already made the attachments, right? So we've attached our audio processor value tree state to our slider. And now what we need to do is we actually just need to put the sliders on the screen somehow. Okay, so that's what we're going to do right now. So what I will do is, so let's just create, let's make these slider styles. So like, let's give it a slider, linear vertical style. So let's do that. So I could say attack slider, set slider style. Now you go through this, which is Juce, slider, slider style. And then I will call this a linear vertical slider. So there we go. And then we need to add and make it visible. So, and if you've seen my previous tutorials on sliders, you will see why I'm doing all of this. And also the default is where it takes the box that shows the value and it sets it on the left. I'm gonna put it below. So I'm going to say attack slider, set text box style, and then we have Juce, slider, text box below. I'll make it read only, so you can just see what it is. You can't actually change it. And let's just give it these values of 50 and 25. So these are just some values I'm picking out of thin air. So that's fine. So normally you would say we're going to do the same thing for decay, sustain, and release slider. Okay, so this is something that I've been doing lately just to make my code look a lot cleaner. Is I will go here and I will actually create a method. So let's do void tap. So we're in our editor class, and let's say set slider params. And then in here, I'm just going to take all of this and I'm going to just paste it in here. And then I'm going to make this function take a Juce slider argument. So Juce slider, make sure you make it a reference because we don't want to make a copy of the slider, okay? Because it wouldn't actually affect the slider that we're trying to affect. And so that for that reason, we need to put the ampersand and it's a reference, okay? So, and now what I need to do is I can just change this to slider. I can change this to slider. I can change this to slider. And then what I need to do is I need to put it in my header because we got this out of line definition error. So I'm just going to put it in my editor and I will just put it here. It's just a method that we've created called set slider params. Now what I could do is rather than having to type this for all of this 4 times, I could just say set slider params, and in here I could put attack slider, set slider params, K slider. You know, this just, to me, this just makes it much, much easier to read than when you have a million sliders that are all setting their slider styles, text box style. If it's all the same, they have this little thing in coding called dry, D-R-Y, don't repeat yourself. So this is following the dry mantra of just write it once and then throw in your slider and it'll do all of the heavy lifting for you there. Okay, so that's why we're doing that. So now we have that, and now what we want to do is we want to go into resized and we want to actually put these on the screen. So I've actually created some arbitrary values here to do this. So there are a bunch of ways that you could do this. You could use set bounds relative. You could use a flex box. There's the other one that's escaping my mind right now. or you could just put them statically on the screen wherever you want. So that's what I'm going to do here, but I'm going to do it in a way that I think is pretty easy to read. So let's first create a couple variables here. So I'm going to do this const auto, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this box that's going to be bounds, which is going to be essentially the bounds of the boundary of the whole plugin, but I'm going to shrink it a little bit. So I could say bounds equals get local bounds, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce that on all sides by 10. Okay, I'm just picking this value out of thin air. So let's do, we're going to do a padding variable. So this will just be the distance between our sliders as we go from left to right. Okay. Once again, this is just something I've done through experimentation. A lot of the UI setup stuff takes a lot of time and a lot of going back and forth. So this is just much faster. And then I'm going to create a slider width. So I'll do slider width equals, and what I want to do is I'm going to use get width because I want to get the width of this this box that I'm in. Sorry, it's going to be bounds.get width. Because what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to stay away from what they call magic numbers, right? Because what happens is that if I'm using what's called magic numbers, which is like a very specific number, then if I just change one thing, then if I change one thing with one of my sliders, I've got to now change everything else. So I'm trying to make this where if I need to change something in where my sliders are laid out, I just go to one place and I can just change all of the sliders at once. Okay, so for that reason, we're going to do this get bounds or bounds.getWidth divided by 4. I'm going to do this minus the padding, okay, because I'm going to account for the padding that I've laid out. That's going to space out how far these sliders are away from each other. I'm going to do slider height, and this will actually be the same. Okay, and then we will do, I like to do this. I don't know if it's something that other developers like to do, but I like to do this thing like a start X, which is if I'm laying something out from left to right, then I'll say, okay, this is where I want my first slider to go. It's going to go all the way on the left. We're going to start at 0. And then I'm going to do one for a start Y. So this will be start Y, slider, start. So I forgot my T here. Y equals, and then what we're going to do is we're going to try to put this relatively in the middle of the screen. So it'll be bounds.get height divided by 2 minus, and then we got to pull it up a little bit from, so right now we're in the middle of the screen and we're going to pull it up a bit where we say slider height divided by 2. Okay, so once again, just values that I've chosen through experimentation. Pardon me. Okay, so now we can set the bounds. So I'm going to do attack slider, set bounds. Once again, there are a million ways that you could do this. You could do this with Flexbox. Flexbox would probably be even more simple in this situation, but here we are. So I'm going to do slider start X. So we're going to start at 0. And then we got slider start Y. So all of our sliders are going to start in the same Y position. And then in here I can put slider width and slider height. Okay. And now since I'm going left to right, all the slider widths and heights are going to be the same. All the slider Ys are going to be the same. I can just take all of this and copy it. And now what I could do is I could use this little handy method. So you'll see what I mean here in a minute. So we got set bounds. And now what I could do is I could actually get the X coordinate of the attack slider. This should be decay slider. Sorry about that. What I could do is I could get the right X coordinate of the attack slider. So I could say attack slider, get right. See, and it says returns the X coordinate of the component's right hand edge. Okay, so I could do that, and I'm just going to add the padding now. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm getting the right coordinate of the X of the attack slider. I'm adding a little bit of padding, and I'm saying, okay, that's where I want the decay slider to begin. And then all of this, the Y, the width, and the height is all the same as what I had before. Okay, now we are going to do sustain slider. And what do you think we're going to do here, right? So we would want to get the right X coordinate of the decay slider, right? We want to get the right edge of the decay slider, and then we want to add the padding once again. So I could say decay slider, get right, plus padding. And once again, all of this is the same. And you can see that what will happen is if I want to change, if I need to change how large my sliders are, I just need to change it one place. I don't need to change it in 3 or 4 places anymore, right? So it makes it nice and extendable. So we got set bounds, and then here once again we're getting the right hand bounds, the right X coordinate of the slider that's next to it. We're adding a little bit of padding. And then, once again, all of this is the same. Okay? So, yeah, that seems, once again, if I need to change the padding, if I need to change how far I want the box to be, I could just change that using bounds and so on. So that's why I'm setting up these little variables at the top here. Okay? And now let's just go into our paint method. Let's just make this black, right? So we can say fill all, and then here we could use juice, colors, and then black, and now we should be good to go. So we've connected the editor to the audio processor value tree state. So we've connected all our sliders to the audio processor value tree state, and we've connected those sliders to our ADSR that's in our synth voice. And now we're opening up Ableton, and we're going to try this out and see if this actually all works. So here we are. And once again, if you get confused, just try to get the code from the GitHub repo. Sorry, I lost my words for a second. Yeah, you can grab this code from my GitHub repo, github.com/the audio programmer. Okay, so I would probably make this a little bit bigger. I mean, that's something we can do down the line, but this is fine for now. The idea here is that eventually we'll probably move this into its own class, right? So this ADSR as a whole will probably be moved into its own class, but we'll do that probably in the next tutorial. So now we have this synth. I'm going to try to play it. Might want to turn your headphones down just in case it's loud. Hopefully not. Okay, cool. So now we have our saw wave. I'll turn it down a little bit. And now let's see if the attack works. So we hear that the attack works now. We can try the release. So that's cool. We can try a little pluck sound here. So let's try that. So we can hear it's a little bit, it could probably be improved, tweaked a little bit in the future. So you hear that when I hold it, that it kind of does the little pluck sound, and then it kind of keeps going. So that could probably be improved in the future, but we'll do that. We'll do some tweaks down the line. This is just to give you a rough idea of how to do this and how to get this started. So there you go. It seems like all of that is working. So just to review what we did there very quickly, we went and we created this update ADSR method here where we could update our ADSR within our Synth voice. Then we went into our plugin processor where we have the where we called that, and we got our parameters from our audio processor value tree state. And one quick note here, if you're further ahead, what you may notice is that, or may observe, is that, hey, you said that these atomic floats, they're quite heavy and they're quite resource intensive, but we're actually updating that every process block, right? So every time this process block calls, which would be the sample rate divided by the buffer size number of times in 1 second. So that's quite a few times in 1 second. Every time you're calling that, it would be doing all of this, getting the values and loading them. That sounds pretty resource intensive. Is there a way that we can only do this if we change a parameter, right? Where there's something magical that says, hey, this parameter has changed. Now we want to call this, and then otherwise it wouldn't call all of this and do all of this work. And there is a way, and we'll show you in one of the future tutorials. So yeah, so then we update our ADSR with our values from our value tree, and then in the editor we just went and we actually put the sliders on the screen, and we did it using kind of static positions at the moment. Maybe in the future we'll do it using Flexbox or something else. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that tutorial. If you found this helpful for you, be sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you next time.